Welcome in. We are so incredibly glad you decided to pull up a chair and join us today.
Yes, welcome. We're thrilled you're here as the third person in our conversation today.
I want to start by asking you a question, and I really want you to turn this over in your mind for a second. Have you ever felt that deep, almost bone-tired exhaustion that comes from the constant pressure to prove your worth?
Oh, I think we all know that feeling on some level.
Right, I'm talking about that nagging, low-level anxiety that tells you you have to constantly be visible, that you have to consistently be noticed and regularly be applauded just to justify your own existence.
That relentless treadmill of needing to be seen just to feel like we actually exist, it permeates almost every layer of how we live, how we work, and how we interact with the people we supposedly care about the most.
If you are nodding your head right now, or even just feeling a slight twinge of recognition in your gut, you are absolutely in the right place.
It's a confusing feeling, though,
Yeah.
because why do we keep running on that treadmill if it makes us so miserable?
And that's really the core mission of our deep dive into the source material today. We are pulling from a fascinating set of notes titled 196, The Second Temptation-Popularity.pdf.
It's, a surprisingly dense exploration.
It really is. It sits right at the intersection of theology and modern psychology. Our goal today is to examine what these notes call the seduction of spectacle.
Which is this incredibly subtle trap we all seem to fall into.
Exactly. And more importantly, we want to discover how we might actually find genuine, lasting security instead.
What I appreciate about this material is how it forces you to stop and examine your own underlying motivations. It bridges ancient spiritual narratives with very modern psychological realities.
Okay, let's unpack this. We start by going all the way back to an ancient story, the gospel account of Jesus in the desert.
Right, specifically looking at the accounts in Matthew chapter 4 and Luke chapter 4.
The scene is incredibly vivid. You have the devil taking Jesus to the absolute pinnacle of the temple, and he urges him essentially to jump off.
It says, throw yourself down.
Yeah, throw yourself down. And the craziest part of this setup is that the temptation sounds almost spiritual. I mean, it sounds faithful.
Because the suggestion is that Scripture promises the angels will swoop in and catch him before he hits the ground.
But this wasn't just a physical dare, right?
No, not at all. That is where we have to look much closer. It wasn't just a challenge of gravity or a test of physical courage. Beneath this seemingly spiritual suggestion lies something far more subtle.
And insidious, really.
Very insidious. The underlying whisper was actually about identity. The temptation was essentially, do something dramatic, be undeniable, let them see who you are.
Let them see who you are. Man, that hits close to home.
It was an invitation to put on a massive public show to prove his own significance.
Because we aren't just talking about an ancient story about a desert cliff here. This brings us right into Henri Nouwen's insights, which feature prominently in our research today.
Yes, in his 1989 book, In the Noun of Jesus, Reflections on Christian Leadership.
Right. Nouwen calls this specific moment the second temptation. He defines it as the temptation to be spectacular.
The temptation to be spectacular. What we are really talking about here is the psychology of visibility.
It's that magnetic pull toward admiration.
Exactly. This temptation relies on a very quiet, very dangerous belief that our identity is only secure if it is proven publicly.
It is the modern assumption that if nobody sees you do it and if nobody claps for you, then it didn't really happen.
Or worse, you don't actually matter.
And right there is how we bridge this ancient cliff story directly to your life right now. The temptation to be spectacular is definitely not confined to the desert.
No, it thrives in our modern reality.
Think about it. We curate ourselves for approval. Curate, like we are
The museum directors of our own lives.
Exactly. We carefully select the best angles, the most impressive achievements.
The wittiest remarks.
We measure our impact through numbers, through metrics, through direct affirmation.
What's fascinating here is that the core lie hasn't changed in thousands of years. The whisper remains exactly the same. If they applaud you, you must matter.
If they applaud you, you must matter. That is such a heavy burden to carry around.
We really need to pause and ask you to critically think about this in your own life. How often do we unconsciously equate being noticed with being valuable?
We live in an era where metrics of attention are the ultimate currency. But attention is not the same thing as value.
It really isn't.
Let's linger on that for a minute, because this is where the heavy, exhausting reality of our daily lives really comes into focus.
The exhaustion of curating that museum exhibit you mentioned.
Yes. Think about what it takes to curate an exhibit. It takes meticulous planning, the perfect lighting, heavy editing.
And hiding all the flaws in the back storage room.
We do this constantly. Think about the classic LinkedIn humble brag. The I am so incredibly humbled and honored to announce posts.
Oh, absolutely. Or spending 20 minutes finding the exact right natural lighting for a Zoom call just to look effortlessly professional.
Effortlessly, right. The irony is how much effort goes into looking effortless.
Or consider the anxiety of read receipts on a text message. Someone reads your message and doesn't reply for 3 hours.
And suddenly you are in an existential tailspin. You're wondering if you did something wrong or if they are mad at you.
Why? Because we have outsourced our sense of security to an audience. We're essentially operating a public relations firm for our own personalities.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But is it really that bad to want people to see your hard work? I mean, shouldn't we want to share our wins and connect with people?
Sharing a win is healthy. The pathology comes in when sharing the win becomes the only way you can feel secure in having achieved it.
So it's about the reliance on the reaction.
Exactly. The insidious thing about the seduction of spectacle is that the reward actually reinforces the exhaustion.
Because when you curate an image, when you act like the perfect employee or the always cheerful friend and people applaud it, you feel a temporary hit of security.
You think, they like me, I am safe.
But it is wildly fleeting. Because tomorrow you have to put on a completely new spectacle, or the applause stops.
And the moment the applause stops, the anxiety rushes right back in.
You think, wait, do I still matter? Did they forget about me?
You are literally trapped by the very audience you sought out for validation.
You wanted them to make you feel secure, but instead they become your wardens. You have to keep dancing for them.
Which raises an important question. If it is this exhausting, and if the security it provides is so incredibly fragile, why is the pull toward visibility so universally strong?
Why do we keep walking into the trap?
Right.
Well, to understand why we do this to ourselves, there's a fascinating psychological angle here in the source material. We can shift gears from theology over to psychology.
The research points us to Donald Winnicott.
Yes, specifically his work in the 1960s on emotional development.
Winnicott is entirely foundational to understanding this behavior. He offers us the concept of the false self.
Now, in psychological terms, the false self isn't a malicious lie we tell to trick people, is it?
No, it's not about being a con artist. Rather, it is a version of yourself that is entirely organized around meeting expectations.
Meeting expectations and preserving the approval of others.
Exactly. It functions as a protective shell.
So Winnicott calls it a protective shell. But what are we protecting ourselves from? How does this false self actually get built in our day-to-day lives?
Imagine a kid who realizes her parents only really light up and show her affection when she brings home a report card with straight A's.
Okay.
The false self is the mask she puts on, the relentless overachiever. She does this to ensure she keeps getting that love and avoiding rejection.
Or think about the funny friend in a friend group, the person who learns early on that they are accepted because they make everyone laugh.
What happens when that person is going through a devastating breakup?
They hide it. They hide their sadness.
They have to. Because their false self...
The entertainer.
Right. The entertainer is what secures their place in the group. They learn to adapt. They try to impress.
We literally become what is rewarded by the people around us. That is terrifying when you stop and think about it.
It really is. You become a reflection of the room's desires, rather than an expression of your own reality.
And this connects so deeply to what we were just talking about with spectacle.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we start to see the profound tragedy of the false self. It originates as a brilliant survival mechanism.
Right, it protects that vulnerable inner core from being judged or abandoned.
But the terrible cost over time is that it completely distances us from our true authenticity. There is a remarkably poetic and haunting realization in the notes about this dynamic.
I know the exact quote you're thinking of.
Applause may grow louder while the inner self grows quieter.
Applause may grow louder while the inner self grows quieter. That is one of those concepts that just stops you in your tracks.
It perfectly describes the phenomenon of the wildly successful executive.
The person who has the perfect resume, the perfect house, the adoring colleagues, but who feels entirely alone and hollow inside.
Because everyone is clapping for the false self. They're clapping for the curated spectacle.
But the true self is starved. It's locked away in the basement.
And because the applause is directed entirely at the mask, the person wearing the mask never actually feels loved.
They only feel useful, or entertaining, or impressive.
Deep down they realize, you don't love me.
Yeah.
You love the show I'm putting on for you.
This leads to a profound sense of isolation, even when you are standing in the middle of a cheering crowd.
Which brings us to two really powerful trade-offs that the notes highlight when we live this way.
First, spectacle becomes a substitute for intimacy.
And second, visibility replaces rootedness.
The connection between Winnicott's psychological concept of the false self and Nguyen's theological seduction of spectacle is incredibly tight here.
We willingly trade real, messy, quiet intimacy for the safe, controlled distance of a spectacle.
It is a much safer bet, emotionally speaking, to be spectacular than to be intimate.
Because intimacy requires tremendous vulnerability, it requires taking off the mask.
Showing your flaws and risking that the other person might walk away.
Spectacle, on the other hand, is highly controlled. You dictate exactly what the audience sees.
But visibility is a very poor substitute for rootedness. I love how the text breaks this down. Visibility is about how far your branches reach into the sky.
While rootedness is about how deep your connections go into the soil.
It's the difference between having 10,000 followers online who hit like on your vacation photos versus having one person you can call when your car breaks down on the side of the highway at 2 in the morning.
That 10,000 followers is incredible visibility.
But the 2 a.m. phone call is rootedness. A strong wind will instantly knock over a highly visible tree that has no roots.
That is the perfect analogy. The highly visible tree is just waiting to be toppled by the slightest bit of criticism, failure, or public misstep.
Here's where it gets really interesting. If spectacle and the false self are the traps, if they leave us unrooted, exhausted, and putting on a perpetual PR campaign, what is the way out?
We pivot right back to the gospel story we started with.
Jesus is standing on the pinnacle of the temple. The crowd is presumably milling around below.
The devil says, jump, put on a show, go viral.
And Jesus refuses.
He completely refuses. And the nature of that refusal is what we really need to examine to find our way out of this trap.
He doesn't leap to secure recognition.
He doesn't take the bait. Why? Because he rests in a deeper identity.
His identity is grounded in a relationship with the Father, not in public display.
He actively chooses hidden trust over dramatic proof.
Hidden trust over dramatic proof. That runs entirely counter to our modern instincts.
It really does. Today, if we have something great, we want to prove it dramatically.
If we have a private victory, we immediately want to post it, share it, leverage it for personal branding.
Choosing to keep something hidden, trusting that it is real and valuable without needing an audience to confirm it, that requires an immense amount of inner strength.
It does. And developing that strength requires recognizing the false promise that the temptation always offers.
The seduction of spectacle is so powerful, so incredibly alluring to us because it offers the illusion of certainty.
The lie whispers, if they see you, you will be secure.
Certainty is what the anxious human heart craves above absolutely everything else.
We want mathematical, tangible proof that we matter. The applause, the likes, the promotions, they give us a metric.
A temporary feeling of certainty.
But it's a total illusion because, as we established, the applause inevitably fades.
The metrics changed.
The algorithm updates, and you are left completely empty-handed again.
Which leads to the absolute core truth we've been driving toward. This is the antidote to the whole exhausting cycle.
True security is not born of admiration. It is born of belonging.
Admiration versus belonging. That is the hinge upon which this entire discussion turns.
Admiration is exactly what the false self seeks.
It is highly transactional. It requires constant performance. You do something impressive, I admire you.
You stop being impressive or you make a mistake, and my admiration stops immediately.
But belonging is entirely different. Belonging is inherent. It is relational.
It is the quiet, deep assurance that you are held and valued simply for who you are, without the spectacle.
Admiration happens from a safe distance. You stand up on a stage. I sit comfortably in the audience and admire you.
But belonging happens up close. Belonging is intimacy. It's roots in the ground.
It's the 2 a.m. phone call.
Jesus could refuse the spectacle of jumping off the temple because he already had the belonging. He didn't need the audience's admiration to know who he was.
That is the ultimate freedom. When you are rooted in belonging, the desperation to be visible just starts to evaporate.
It doesn't mean you have to hide in a cave.
Not at all.
Yeah.
You can still do great things. You can still achieve and create and lead and share your work.
But the compulsive need for it to be a spectacle vanishes.
Your core identity is no longer on the line with every single public action.
So what does this all mean? We've covered ancient theology, the temptation in the desert, Nguyen's insights into leadership, and Winnicott's psychology of the false self.
It's a lot of ground to cover.
It is. But right now, we want to bring this conversation directly to your doorstep. We want to pose the central question that this material asks directly to you.
Where do you seek your affirmation?
Are you building your life on applause, or are you building it on presence?
That is the ultimate evaluation we have to make of our daily lives.
The path away from spectacle is not a flashy one.
In fact, it is much quieter. It requires a deliberate leading inward
It moves toward prayer, toward internal integration.
and toward finding the profound courage to just be real without feeling the constant nagging need to be impressive.
The courage to be real without needing to be impressive. I think that is a mantra we could all afford to write on a sticky note and put on our bathroom mirrors.
I might just do that today.
It takes real, tangible bravery to step off the stage, to stop curating the museum exhibit of your life,
And just exist in the quiet reality of who you actually are.
to trade the exhausting hustle of admiration for the deep, steady peace of belonging.
It takes immense courage because the quiet can be intimidating when you are used to the noise of the crowd.
Which brings us to a final thought based on Winnicott's insights. Something for you to take with you and mull over as you go about your day.
If the false self absolutely requires an audience to feel secure, what happens to your sense of identity in the quiet moments when the applause inevitably stops and the room is finally empty?
Wow, that is definitely something to chew on today. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the source material.
We loved having you as the third voice in our conversation.
We really want to encourage you to take a moment of quiet presence today. Just step away from the spectacle, even for a few minutes, and let yourself just be. We'll catch you next time.